Welcome to this edition of Vantage Point. I'm here with the Reverend Jocelyn Gardner Spencer, who is the pastor of the First Congregational Church in Woodstock, Connecticut. And Jocelyn also is a member of our conference board of directors, and for the past couple of years has served on the planning team that has been exploring the initiative to form a new conference between the Connecticut Conference, the Massachusetts Conference, and the Rhode Island Conference, an exciting development in unity. Welcome, Jocelyn.
Good morning, Kent.
The three boards of the Connecticut, Massachusetts, and Rhode Island Conference met several weeks ago, and in that meeting, we discussed a resolution that has come before our three conferences, and that resolution, in essence, calls for the formation of a new conference of the United Church of Christ. We've had several names of this initiative: RIMACT, United in Mission and Ministry, which sounds like and now we are leaning into the idea of calling this Together, as one. So this initiative that we've been talking about and discerning and praying about for the last year, and actually longer, has a couple of theological underpinnings. One of the formative scriptures that we've been using in our work together has been this from Isaiah chapter 43, verses 18 through 9a. Do not remember the former things or consider the things of old. I'm about to do a new thing. Now it springs forth. Do you not perceive it? We also have been thinking about a New Testament passage that has informed our work. Jocelyn, would you share a little bit about what that passage is?
Sure, thanks, Kent. It actually comes from several passages. It's an image, more than one passage, that's used in the letters of the Apostle Paul. And of course, that image is the body of Christ, one body with many members. The hand cannot say to the foot, I have no need of you. It's the idea that we are connected, quite literally, members of a body, that when one is strengthened, we are all strengthened. When one is wounded, we are all wounded, and that we are bigger and stronger and better together when we are united, when we embrace our identity as a united body.
One of the things that you and I have talked about is that in the midst of building the relationships with our planning team and with the other boards of directors and other colleagues across our conference boundaries has been the reality that we've not only built relationships, we've also recognized that this coming together has been a real blessing. Can you say a word about how this has informed you and your ministry in Woodstock and beyond?
Sure. It really has been a gift to build those connections and relationships in this wider body of Christ with our colleagues in Rhode Island and Massachusetts, and of course in Connecticut. And I have discovered through that process new ways of thinking that our old structures didn't encourage me to do. So as an example, my congregation in Woodstock is in the northeastern corner of Connecticut. I have connected in the almost 4 years I've been here with colleagues all across the state, in the total opposite corner in Greenwich and in Westport, down by New York City, up in the northwest corner by Silver Lake, all across Connecticut. And yet, the town that immediately borders Woodstock to the north, I don't know their pastor because it's across the state line. It's Southbridge, Massachusetts. Literally, probably the top 5 closest churches to mine. And some of that's on me. I could have made that happen. But our institutional structures didn't encourage me to do that.
Right, and the artificiality of the boundaries of state lines, which has informed in some ways the way conferences were originally designed in 1957, there have been no changes to those conference boundaries. And here in New England, we have a conference for every state. But as we've gone through this process together, one of the things I've discovered is when I sit at my desk and think about sort of the ministries of the Connecticut Conference, I've begun to think about, I wonder what Massachusetts might do around that particular issue. I wonder what the Rhode Island Conference, which brings a particular strength to our conversations, I wonder how they, as a smaller membership conference, might in fact handle that particular issue. And I find myself thinking about, consulting with, being curious about what has typically been defined as the other, which is a discovery unto itself, I think, in the midst of this. Any thoughts about that?
Well, I think it's a new thing and it's an old thing.
Yeah.
It's consistent with the call of Christ. It's consistent with the mission of the church ever since the beginning, connecting with those who we think of as other, expanding the boundaries of who is considered us. Whenever we have a them, making it us. Whenever we try to draw a line and build a wall, breaking that down, crossing those boundaries. If you think about who Jesus spent time with, it was always the people who were on the margins, who were pushed to the outside. He was all about crossing boundaries that society had imposed on people. So in some way, we are re-embracing or rediscovering something that's been in our DNA since the beginning. And I think it's a pattern that's been happening on some levels for some time. I think there's been a pattern of pastors being more and more connected. You've really emphasized interdependence here in Connecticut, local churches leaning on each other. And in Woodstock, we have an example of that. Our congregation, First Congregational Church of Woodstock and the East Woodstock Congregational Church do a number of programs together. We share youth ministry, we share Lenten programming, we share summer services, a whole variety of other things that we do. And we find that we are all improved. We all have more opportunities because we're doing it together.
So one of the questions that has surfaced in the midst of our work together and discerning together has been around what the structure of a new conference might look like. And some folks are expressing we need to know exactly what the structure will be. Others have said, we understand you may not be able to answer all those questions about structure. Would you say a word about how, in the board conversations and the conversations that happened to date, where you see the structure headed?
Well, that's a great question, and it is surfacing from a number of voices in all three of our conferences who are wondering, what does this look like concretely as we live into this interdependent relationship? And I can't tell you exactly what it looks like because we're living into it. And I think we have a couple of good models of what that looks like. One is when the United Church of Christ was founded. They didn't have all of the structures worked out. They took a vote and said, yes, we want to be together. We believe God is calling us to be together as one and to live into that. And then they figured out what the structure looked like.
Right.
Likewise, when our nation was founded, we didn't have the Constitution at the beginning. We had the Articles of Confederation, and they weren't quite right. It took some work.
Right.
So if we were to come up with a structure today or next month, probably we wouldn't get it quite right. And so in my view, it is a faithful thing to say, yes, we believe God is calling us to be together. And as we live into that, we will figure out what the structure looks like.
For me, the other part of the structure question is what we have to figure out is why we're doing this. The big question of the why that Simon Sinek from TED Talk says organizations must be clear about the why. And for me, and I'd be interested in hearing for you what the why of wanting to do this would be. For me, the why is impact. It's about making a difference in Southern New England, that the United Church of Christ witness, our core values, are so important for the world in which we live, that the why of this really is about making a difference, making Southern New England a more just, a more compassionate, a more loving part of God's world, and that together as one we can make that impact. How about the why for you?
It's very similar to what you said. I believe that just as it's been in our DNA as Christians since the beginning, and it's been in our DNA as the United Church of Christ since the beginning of the UCC, we are stronger when we come together. We can have a greater impact. We can do ministry better. We can be Christians better when we are together because we, in fact, are. We already know this deep down, right? You and I know that we are connected.
Right.
That something that hurts you hurts me, and something that hurts me hurts you. We know that.
Right.
But as we continue to rediscover that on different levels, I think we grow in our discipleship. We grow in our opportunities and abilities to follow God's call, to discern God's call, and to follow it, and to have an impact in the world.
I want to thank you for being part of the conversation today, recognizing that there may be additional questions and comments. We hope that we will hear from folks about those. There'll be lots of opportunities for input. We hope people will turn out for the joint annual meeting on June 16th and 17th at the Connecticut Convention Center. We will be together as one to consider the resolution that calls for the creation of a new Conference of the United Church of Christ. It is an exciting time in which to be engaged in ministry, and I'm grateful for your participation in our process to date.
Thank you, Kent. My pleasure.
Thank you for joining us for this edition of Vantage Point. We wish you God's blessings, and we encourage your comments and questions about the content of this particular issue of Vantage Point. God's peace be with you in these days.